Captain Jack Hawkins stared at the holographic display, coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips. After 15 years working in Earth's deep space communications array, or the disk array as the staff called it, he'd seen plenty of unusual transmissions. Strange pulsar patterns, mysterious radio bursts, and once, a particularly confusing signal that turned out to be someone's microwave interference from the break room. But this was different. Computer replay transmission, he said, setting down his coffee. The alien face reappeared, bathed in ominous red lighting. Its features were vaguely humanoid if you ignored the 6 eyes arranged in a hexagonal pattern and skin that resembled wet granite. People of Earth, the creature boomed in surprisingly good English. I am Supreme Commander Vex'lor of the Galactic Hegemony. Your primitive civilization has been observed and found wanting. You will submit to immediate classification as a protectorate species or face annihilation. You have 24 Earth hours to respond. The message ended with what Jack could only describe as an unnecessarily dramatic fade to black. Well, Jack muttered to the empty monitoring station. That's just perfect. The clock on the wall read 3:17 a.m. Technically, protocol dictated that Jack should immediately alert the United Earth Defense Council, wake up the president, and probably trigger some kind of global emergency response. But Jack Hawkins hadn't become the night shift supervisor of humanity's least exciting monitoring station by being a stickler for protocol. No, Jack had cultivated a carefully calibrated blend of competence and apathy that allowed him to handle most situations with minimal paperwork. Computer, analyze transmission, probability of authentic extraterrestrial contact versus some MIT student's idea of a prank. The computer hummed. Transmission origin verified as 2.7 light-years beyond Neptune's orbit. Signal characteristics inconsistent with human technology. Authentication confidence, 98.7%. Jack sighed, running a hand through his perpetually disheveled hair. Of course, the one night I cover for Dave. He tapped the emergency alert button, which would simultaneously notify all major world governments, military commands, and most annoyingly, his direct supervisor. While waiting for the inevitable storm of panic to hit, Jack reviewed the transmission again. Something about it struck him as odd. The alien spoke perfect English, used Earth measurements of time, and the whole submit or die routine felt suspiciously like every B-movie first contact scenario he'd ever seen. His terminal pinged with an incoming video call from General Williams, who appeared on screen with bedhead and wearing what was clearly a hastily donned uniform jacket over pajamas. Hawkins, what the hell am I looking at? The general barked. First contact, sir. Apparently we've been found wanting. Is this confirmed? Computer gives it 98.7% authenticity, sir. The general's face paled. I'm activating the Defense Council. The president is being notified. Do not respond to this transmission without direct authorization. Is that clear? Crystal, sir, Jack replied, secretly relieved that the responsibility was being shifted upward. Maintain your post, and the general was interrupted by another call. I have to take this. The Joint Chiefs are conferencing. Stand by for orders. The screen went blank, leaving Jack alone with the frozen image of the 6-eyed alien commander. Submit or face annihilation, Jack muttered. Real original. His phone buzzed with a text from Dave. Dude, aliens, for real. Jack typed back. Yep, threats and everything. Very dramatic. Dave responded with a gif of a cartoon character rolling its eyes and making a wonking motion with its hand. Jack snorted. It perfectly captured his feelings about Commander Vex'lor's theatrical delivery. Without thinking, he copied the gif and attached it to the alien transmission file. That's when disaster struck in the form of a coffee mug. As Jack reached for his drink, his elbow knocked it over, sending lukewarm coffee cascading across his control panel. The liquid seeped between the keys, causing several systems to short-circuit simultaneously. Emergency lights flashed as Jack frantically grabbed tissues to mop up the mess. No. By the time he cleared the coffee and reset the system, a new message appeared on his screen. Transmission sent. Receipt confirmed. Jack's blood ran cold. Computer, what transmission was sent? Response to incoming message from coordinates 2.7 light-years beyond Neptune. Contents. Animated image file, quote I_roll_wonking.gif. 20 minutes later, As Jack was contemplating whether jumping out the window of the 20-story disk array facility would be preferable to explaining what happened, a new transmission arrived. Commander Vex'lor's 6 eyes had narrowed to slits, the red background lighting now pulsing like a heartbeat. "People of Earth," the alien hissed, "your insulting response has been received. Such unprecedented defiance, such boldness, no species has ever dared to mock the hegemony. Your pathetic planet would have been granted mercy under our rule, but now you have sealed your fate." The transmission cut to show an enormous armada of sleek, metallic ships. "The hegemony battle fleet will arrive in 7 days. Prepare yourselves for war, humans. Your bravery, while foolish, will be remembered in the archives of those who defied us." As the transmission ended, Jack stared blankly at the screen. Somehow, he'd just accidentally declared war on behalf of Earth against an advanced alien civilization. His phone buzzed again with another text from Dave. "How's it going?" Jack typed back. "Remember how you always said I'd never amount to anything? Well, I just started an interstellar war with a GIF." The reply came instantly. "Pics or it didn't happen." Jack took a screenshot of Vex'lor's furious face and sent it with the caption, "Humanity. F***. Yeah. As emergency alarms began blaring throughout the facility, Jack took a long, deep breath. It was going to be a very, very long day. The United Earth Defense Headquarters buzzed with barely controlled chaos. Located beneath the old United Nations building in New York, the facility had been designed to coordinate humanity's response to global catastrophes, pandemics, nuclear war, climate disasters, and theoretically, alien invasion. Theoretically being the operative word. Jack Hawkins sat at a massive round table, surrounded by military generals, politicians and scientists. Every few minutes, someone new would glare at him, having just been briefed on how exactly humanity had declared intergalactic war. "Let me get this straight," said President Reyes, pinching the bridge of her nose. "You responded to the first confirmed contact with an alien civilization, with a meme." "Technically, it was a GIF," Jack corrected, immediately regretting it as the room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "But yes, that's the gist of it." General Williams slammed his fist on the table. "This idiot has doomed us all." "With respect, General," Jack said, somehow finding a reserve of courage, "they were already threatening to enslave us. I just expedited things." A woman seated across from Jack snorted with laughter, drawing everyone's attention. She wore a lab coat over a t-shirt that read, "I'm silently correcting your grammar," and had electric blue streaks running through her otherwise professional-looking brown hair. "Something amusing, Dr. Nash?" asked the president. Dr. Ellie Nash, Earth's foremost xenolinguist, grinned. "Actually, yes. Captain Hawkins may have accidentally done exactly the right thing." "Explain," demanded the president. Ellie stood up, activating the room's holographic display with a few gestures. "The Galactic Hegemony's communication pattern suggests a hierarchical species with strict social protocols. Their default assumption would be that Earth would either cower, or attempt formal diplomatic channels." She brought up the image of Vex'lor's first transmission alongside his response. "Look at his second message. Unprecedented defiance. Such boldness. No species has ever dared." He's not just angry, he's impressed. Captain Hawkins' casual dismissal completely blindsided them. A distinguished-looking man in an impeccable suit cleared his throat. Ambassador Timothy Quill, the UN's designated diplomatic liaison, had been frantically preparing for this moment since the transmission came in. "While Dr. Nash's analysis is interesting," he said with practiced condescension, "we must establish proper diplomatic channels immediately. I've prepared a formal apology explaining that Captain Hawkins' response was unauthorized and—" "Oh God, please don't do that," Ellie interrupted, rolling her eyes so hard that Jack was impressed they didn't fall out of her head. Ambassador Quill's face flushed. "Excuse me, apologizing would be the worst possible move," Ellie explained, as if talking to a particularly slow child. "They've already reframed their understanding of humanity as bold warriors rather than potential slaves. An apology now would create cognitive dissonance. They'd see us as either deceptive or weak. Either way, we'd lose the only advantage we've accidentally gained. Dr. Nash, while your credentials in xenolinguistics are impressive," Quill said tightly. I have 30 years of diplomatic experience. With humans, Ellie cut in, not six-eyed granite-skinned aliens who clearly consume action movies as documentaries. The president raised a hand, silencing them both. What do you recommend, Dr. Nash? We need to maintain the perception that we're not intimidated, not apologize, not explain, just double down. General Williams looked appalled. You want us to provoke them further? I want us to survive, Ellie replied, and the best way to do that is to keep them off balance. Jack felt a weird sense of validation. So my screw-up might actually help. Don't push it, Hawkins, General Williams growled. Ambassador Quill was not ready to concede. Madam President, if I may, I've prepared a measured response that acknowledges their communication without offering offense. A diplomatic middle ground. The president nodded. Let's see it.
20 minutes later, they all watched in horrified silence as Vex'lor received their carefully crafted message. Earth's response had been edited by committee, Ambassador Quill's diplomatic phrasing with Dr. Nash's cultural insights, and the Defense Council's strategic obscuration of Earth's military capabilities. The alien commander stared at the message for a long moment. All six of his eyes blinked in sequence, from top to bottom. Humans, he finally said, his voice even deeper than before. Your response puzzles the hegemony. You speak of peace while employing the ancient warrior dialect of passive-aggressive bureaucracy. Truly, you are masters of psychological warfare. Ellie burst out laughing while Ambassador Quill's jaw literally dropped. Your attempt to confuse us with conflicting signals is noted, Vex'lor continued. The hegemony appreciates worthy adversaries. Our battle fleet continues its approach. We look forward to testing your mettle in glorious combat. The transmission ended, leaving the room in stunned silence. Well, Jack said brightly, that could have gone worse. Ambassador Quill loosened his tie, looking faint. How could that possibly have gone worse? Ellie shrugged. They could have nuked us from orbit already. The president stood, her expression grim. Dr. Nash, since your analysis seems most accurate, you're now heading our alien communications team. Ambassador Quill, you'll work with her. Quill looked like he'd rather eat glass. Captain Hawkins, the president continued, since you started this mess, you're on the team too. Maybe your unique approach will continue to be useful. General Williams began outlining Earth's defensive preparations, but Jack was only half listening. He leaned toward Ellie and whispered, so we're supposed to outbluff an advanced alien armada? Ellie grinned. Basically, yes. And given what they've seen of humanity so far, I'd say we have a pretty good starting hand. How do you figure? They think we're crazy enough to respond to a threat of annihilation with the equivalent of whatever, dude. She raised an eyebrow. Now we just need to convince them that was actually restraint on our part. Jack considered this. So we're basically playing galactic chicken. Exactly, Ellie said, her eyes bright with excitement rather than fear. And the good news is, I'm really good at games where the winning strategy is being just a little crazier than your opponent. As the meeting continued around them, Jack couldn't decide if he felt better or worse about humanity's chances. On one hand, the fate of Earth now partially rested on his and Ellie's ability to bluff. On the other hand, if there were two people who could convincingly act like humanity was too dangerous to mess with, a chronically sarcastic communications officer and a brilliant xenolinguist with zero filter seemed like decent candidates. The only question was whether they could keep up the charade for 7 days, until the hegemony battle fleet arrived. 3 days after Earth's accidental declaration of intergalactic war, Jack found himself in a repurposed conference room that now served as the Alien Communication Strategic Response Center, or as Ellie had immediately dubbed it, the bullshit bunker. The walls were covered with printouts of alien transmissions, psychological analyses, and a surprisingly large collection of movie posters that Ellie insisted were critical research materials. In the center of the room stood a holographic display of the solar system, with a blinking red dot steadily approaching Earth. 4 days, Jack muttered, watching the simulation of the alien fleet's progress. 4 days until they arrive, and we're all vaporized because I spilled coffee. Cheer up, Ellie said, tossing a stress ball at his head. If you hadn't spilled that coffee, we'd be preparing to welcome our new alien overlords instead. Jack caught the ball reflexively. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to keep you focused, she replied. Besides,
we're making progress. Every transmission we've sent has reinforced their perception of us as these mysterious badasses. Ambassador Quill entered, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Progress is a relative term, Dr. Nash. The Hegemony's latest message indicates they're interpreting our communications as, and I quote, the typical pre-battle posturing of a warrior race. See? Progress. Ellie beamed. The door burst open again, and a young man in a lieutenant's uniform bounded in, carrying what appeared to be 3 tablet computers, a box of donuts, and an unreasonable amount of enthusiasm for someone facing potential planetary extinction. Morning, everyone. I brought breakfast and battle plans. He dumped everything on the conference table, sending several classified documents fluttering to the floor. Lieutenant Rodriguez, Quill acknowledged with a pained expression. I see punctuality continues to elude you. Lieutenant Max Rodriguez, recently assigned to the team as their military technical advisor, flashed a smile that belonged in a toothpaste commercial. Sorry, sir. I was up all night running simulations on our defensive capabilities. And, Jack asked, reaching for a donut. Max's smile dimmed slightly. Well, assuming the alien tech is at least a century advanced of ours, which is conservative based on their faster-than-light travel capability, we're looking at a combat effectiveness ratio of approximately. Just give us the bottom line, Lieutenant. Quill interrupted. We're screwed, Max said cheerfully. Like completely obliterated within hours screwed. Jack choked on his donut. You seem oddly okay with that assessment. Oh, I'm terrified, Max assured him, still smiling. This is just how I process extreme stress. Plus, I've been preparing for this my entire life. You've been preparing for an alien invasion? Quill asked dubiously. Well, not specifically this alien invasion, Max clarified. But I've seen every sci-fi movie ever made, played every alien invasion video game, and I did my military thesis on theoretical extraterrestrial combat scenarios. Ellie perked up. Wait, you're a sci-fi nerd? Certified and card-carrying, Max confirmed proudly. For the first time in days, Ellie looked genuinely excited. This is perfect, Lieutenant. I need your expertise on something. She led Max to her workstation, pulling up a compilation of the Hegemony's communications. I've been analyzing their language patterns, cultural references, and threat displays. There's something familiar about it all, but I can't place it. Max studied the screen, munching thoughtfully on a donut. After a few minutes his eyes widened. Holy crap, they're speaking movie villain. What? Jack and Quill asked simultaneously. Look at their dialogue. Max pointed at specific phrases. Your defiance will be remembered. Prepare for glorious combat. Testing your mettle. This isn't how real military commanders talk. This is how alien bad guys talk in movies. Jack frowned. Are you saying they're basing their communication style on our entertainment? It makes perfect sense, Ellie said, tapping rapidly on her keyboard. If they've been monitoring Earth, they would have intercepted our broadcasts. Movies, TV shows, radio, all streaming out into space for decades. So they think all humans talk like action heroes? Jack asked incredulously. Not just talk like them, Max said, his excitement building. They think we are them. Think about it. If all you knew about humans came from our movies, what would you believe? Quill's expression shifted from skepticism to dawning horror. You'd believe we routinely survive apocalyptic events, alien invasions, and global disasters, with nothing but grit, one-liners, and convenient plot devices, Ellie finished. They think we're unstoppable badasses, because that's what our entertainment shows. Jack leaned back in his chair, processing this revelation. So my accidental gif confirmed their worst fears, Max said. You basically responded to their threat with the equivalent of Bruce Willis yawning at Hans Gruber. For the first time since this whole disaster began, Jack felt a glimmer of hope. So we have a psychological advantage. More than that, Ellie said. We have a playbook. If they're interpreting us through the lens of action movies, we can use that framework to our advantage. Quill, ever the voice of diplomatic caution, raised a hand. Even if this theory is correct, and I'm not saying it is, how does it help us? They're still arriving with a technologically superior armada in 4 days. Max began bouncing on his toes like an excited puppy. What if we lean into it? Give them the full Earth action hero experience. Meaning, Jack prompted. We send them transmissions that reinforce their belief that we're these indestructible, fearless warriors. Max explained. Clips from our most ridiculous action and disaster movies, presented as, I don't know, historical footage or training videos. Psychological warfare, Quill murmured, surprisingly not dismissing the idea outright. Exactly. Max pulled up a folder on his tablet. I happen to have a curated collection of humanity's most physics-defying action sequences right here. Jack raised an eyebrow. You just carry that around, you don't? Max seemed genuinely surprised. Ellie was already nodding enthusiastically. This could work. We combine actual military footage with movie clips, presented as Earth's standard defensive capabilities. They'd have no way of knowing what's real and what's fiction, Jack realized. And based on their communications so far, they're already halfway to believing we're invincible, Ellie added. Ambassador Quill, to everyone's surprise, was thoughtfully stroking his chin. The President did authorize us to pursue unconventional strategies, and this is certainly unconventional. Max rubbed his hands together gleefully. So we're going with Operation Blockbuster. We are not calling it that, Quill said firmly. We are absolutely calling it that, Ellie countered.
Jack looked around at his unlikely teammates, a sarcastic xenolinguist, a by-the-book diplomat, and an overly enthusiastic military sci-fi geek. Together they were Earth's best hope against an alien armada. Somehow that was both the most terrifying and most fitting defense humanity could muster. All right, Operation Blockbuster it is, Jack conceded. But if we're going to convince advanced aliens that Earth is too badass to mess with, we're going to need more than just movie clips. Max grinned, pulling up what appeared to be elaborate schematics on his tablet. Already ahead of you, Captain. I've been designing some defensive systems that look impressive but are entirely fictional. Jack leaned over to see complex diagrams labeled with names like quantum displacement shield and gravitational inversion cannon. Are those actually possible? Jack asked. Oh, absolutely not, Max said cheerfully, but they look awesome and use just enough real science to sound plausible. This is insane, Jack muttered. We're trying to bluff our way out of planetary annihilation with movie clips and made-up weapons. Ellie patted his shoulder. Welcome to diplomacy, Jack. It's always been this way. We're just being more honest about it. As the team began compiling their elaborate deception, Jack couldn't help but wonder if Earth's fate really rested on convincing aliens that Independence Day was a documentary. But then again, if the alternative was surrender or annihilation, maybe insanity was humanity's best strategy. After all, it had worked so far. This is either the stupidest or most brilliant plan in human history, Jack said, watching Max splice together footage of a nuclear submarine launch with a scene from a movie where the hero surfs a tsunami on a car door. The line between stupidity and brilliance is measured only by success, Max replied, not looking up from his work. Sun Tzu said that. No, he didn't. Ellie called from across the room. Fine, I said it, Max admitted. But it sounds like something Sun Tzu would say if he had to bluff aliens with movie clips. Operation Blockbuster was in full swing. The conference room now resembled a bizarre film studio crossed with a military command center. Screens displayed various editing projects, while whiteboards were covered with increasingly absurd human defensive capabilities. They planned to showcase to the hegemony. Ambassador Quill entered, accompanied by General Williams. Both men stopped short at the scene before them. What in God's name is happening here? The general demanded. Max, wearing headphones around his neck, spun in his chair. Operation Blockbuster, sir. We're compiling Earth's historical combat footage to send to the hegemony. The general looked at the nearest screen, which showed a muscle-bound action star outrunning an explosion in slow motion. That's from Demolition Day 3. You've seen it? Max asked brightly. Lieutenant, everyone has seen it. That's my concern, the general growled. Won't the aliens recognize these as entertainment? Ellie shook her head. That's the beauty of it, General. They've been interpreting our movies as some kind of cultural documentation. We're just leaning into their misunderstanding. Quill, who had been surprisingly supportive of the plan, gestured to a chair. Please, General, let them explain the full strategy. Jack took over, pulling up their analysis of the hegemony's communications. Based on their language patterns and references, we believe they've constructed their understanding of Earth primarily through our broadcast entertainment, specifically action movies, disaster films and military documentaries, all jumbled together.
Their perception of humans is that we're essentially unkillable action heroes who regularly survive extinction-level events, Ellie continued. And rather than correct this misconception, we're reinforcing it, Max finished excitedly. Check this out. He hit a key and the main screen displayed what appeared to be military footage of tanks and aircraft, but with subtle digital enhancements that made them look far more advanced than they actually were. We've modified real military exercises to suggest capabilities we don't actually have, Jack explained. Nothing too obvious, just enough to make them think twice. The general frowned. And this is supposed to deter an advanced alien fleet. How exactly? Psychological warfare, sir. Ellie said, even technologically superior forces can be deterred if they believe the cost of victory will be too high. It's the same principle as a rattlesnake's rattle, Max added. It doesn't actually make the snake more dangerous, but it makes predators think twice about attacking. General Williams pinched the bridge of his nose, and the president has approved this strategy. Enthusiastically, Quill confirmed. Especially since our conventional options are limited at best, the general sighed deeply. Carry on then, but I want daily reports, and if at any point this seems to be making things worse, we'll pivot immediately, Jack promised, though he had no idea what that pivot would be. After the general left, Quill turned to the team. The Hegemony sent another transmission. I think you should all see it. He pulled up the video, and Commander Vex'lor's six-eyed face filled the screen. The alien looked troubled. Humans, Vex'lor began, his usual bombastic tone slightly subdued. Your latest communications have been concerning. The footage you have shared of your standard defensive protocols has been analyzed by our tactical experts. The team exchanged nervous glances. They'd sent their first compilation of Earth's defensive capabilities yesterday, a carefully edited mix of actual military footage, movie clips, and Max's enhanced visuals. The Hegemony has conquered 143 planetary systems, Vex'lor continued, but none have displayed your level of recklessness. Your willingness to detonate your own atmosphere to repel invaders is particularly troubling. Max mouthed Independence Day with a thumbs up. Nevertheless, the battle fleet continues its approach. We shall test your defenses directly. If you are indeed the warriors you appear to be, it shall be a glorious conflict. The transmission ended, and the room was silent for a moment. Did it work? Jack finally asked. Are they scared? Not scared enough to turn around, Quill pointed out. Ellie was grinning. But they're uncertain, concerning, troubling. These aren't the words of someone confident in victory. We need to push harder, Max declared, already turning back to his workstation. If they thought our first transmission was concerning, wait until they see what I'm working on next. Over the next 2 days, Operation Blockbuster escalated into what Jack could only describe as cinematic psychological warfare. Each transmission to the Hegemony became more elaborate than the last. First, they sent footage of historical Earth conflicts showing humans surviving increasingly absurd scenarios. Jumping motorcycles over explosions, outrunning fireballs and punching through brick walls. Next came a demonstration of Earth's planetary defense grid, actually a clever composite of missile tests, northern lights footage, and space station imagery that suggested Earth was surrounded by energy weapons. Max's personal favorite was the classified combat augmentation program. Training footage of special forces edited to imply that all human soldiers could run up walls, survive multiple gunshot wounds, and throw vehicles when necessary. The beauty of it, Max explained as they reviewed their latest creation, is that we're not showing anything completely impossible. We're just suggesting that the extreme edge cases of human capability are actually our baseline. And they're buying it? Jack asked, still skeptical despite the increasingly uncertain tone of the alien responses. Look at their latest message, Ellie said, pulling it up. Commander Vex'lor appeared, now flanked by 2 other aliens in what appeared to be military uniforms. The commander's usual red background lighting had been replaced with a more subdued blue. Humans of Earth, he began, his voice notably less bombastic. The Hegemony Council has reviewed your transmissions with great interest. Your species' ability to survive in environments that would kill most sentient beings is remarkable. The alien paused, all 6 eyes blinking in sequence. The battle fleet will arrive in your solar system tomorrow. However, the Council has authorized me to offer terms before engagement begins. Jack, Ellie, Max and Quill all leaned forward simultaneously. The Hegemony proposes a demonstration combat in a neutral location. Your moon would suffice. A single Hegemony warrior against your champion. The outcome will determine whether full-scale invasion proceeds. They want to duel us, Jack asked incredulously as the message ended. Like one-on-one? It's perfect, Max exclaimed. They're giving us an out. Quill looked less enthusiastic. Except we'd actually have to fight one of them, and presumably, they're selecting their best warrior. So we decline, Jack suggested. No, Ellie and Max said simultaneously. If we decline, we shatter the illusion. Ellie explained. They'd immediately suspect we've been bluffing. But if we accept, Quill began. We keep control of the narrative, Ellie finished, and we buy more time. Jack ran a hand through his hair. Time for what, exactly? Even if we delay them, we're still technologically outmatched. No amount of movie magic changes that. Max had gone suspiciously quiet, staring at his tablet with an intensity that was either brilliant inspiration or complete mental breakdown. What? Jack asked. What are you thinking? A slow smile spread across Max's face. What if we don't need to actually win a fight? What if we just need to convince them it's not worth finding out who would win? Elaborate, Quill demanded.
Max pulled up a file on the main screen, a compilation video he'd been working on labeled Earth's Greatest Victories. We send this as our final transmission before they arrive. It's humanity's greatest hits. Every impossible victory, every against all odds survival, every moment where the human spirit triumphed over certain doom. Movies again? Jack asked. Movies, sports comebacks, historical last stands, scientific breakthroughs, all edited together to tell one story. Humans never know when they're beaten. Max was practically vibrating with excitement. We accept their challenge, but we also send this as our, let's call it our audition tape. Ellie was already nodding. The message isn't we will win. It's even if you win, we'll never stop fighting. Exactly, Max exclaimed. We make victory seem too costly even if it's achievable. Jack looked at Quill, expecting the ambassador to provide a reality check. Instead, the diplomat was thoughtfully nodding. It's essentially the same principle as nuclear deterrence, Quill mused. The point isn't to win the conflict, it's to make starting the conflict seem irrational. Jack considered this. Their plan had evolved from desperate bluffing to something almost strategic. They weren't trying to convince the aliens that Earth would win. They were trying to convince them that Earth couldn't be conquered in any meaningful sense. Okay, Jack finally said. Let's do it. One final transmission before they arrive, the most ridiculously inspiring compilation of human determination ever created. Max grinned. I've been preparing for this moment my entire life. As the team set to work on their final desperate gambit, Jack couldn't help but marvel at the absurdity of it all. Earth's fate might well rest on a highlight reel of action movies, sports comebacks and historical speeches. A greatest hits compilation of human stubbornness. It was ridiculous. It was far-fetched. It was humanity's best hope. The day of the Hegemony fleet's arrival dawned with an eerie calm. Around the world, people went about their business with the strange resignation that comes from knowing advanced aliens might vaporize the planet but also being completely unable to do anything about it. The Defense Council had made the controversial decision not to announce the full gravity of the situation to the general public. The official statement acknowledged contact with an extraterrestrial civilization and mentioned ongoing diplomatic negotiations but conveniently left out the imminent annihilation part. In the bullshit bunker, as it was now officially labeled on the door, Jack stared at the orbital tracking screen. The red dot representing the Hegemony fleet had entered the solar system and was decelerating as it approached Earth's orbit. They're here, he announced unnecessarily to the room. Ellie looked up from her workstation, dark circles under her eyes after their all-night editing session. How long until they reach Earth? 6 hours, Jack replied, give or take. Max, who had somehow maintained his enthusiastic energy despite not sleeping for nearly 48 hours, bounced over with a tablet. Final cut is ready. I present to you Humanity, a history of defying the impossible. That title needs work, Ellie muttered. True, but we don't have time for another revision, Quill said, straightening his perpetually perfect tie. The President and Joint Chiefs are waiting for our final recommendation. Jack took a deep breath. Let's see it, Max.
The lieutenant queued up their masterpiece on the main screen. What followed was 7 minutes and 23 seconds of the most ridiculously inspiring compilation of human achievement ever assembled. It began with actual historical footage, the Wright brothers' first flight, Neil Armstrong stepping onto the moon, the fall of the Berlin Wall, moments where humanity had overcome seemingly impossible odds. This seamlessly transitioned into military footage, carefully enhanced by Max to suggest technological capabilities far beyond reality, stealth aircraft that appeared to vanish completely, submarines emerging from impossible depths, soldiers performing feats of strength and endurance that stretched credibility without quite breaking it. The final section was their pièce de résistance, a montage of classified training exercises that were actually scenes from action movies, disaster films, and superhero blockbusters, edited to remove the most obviously fictional elements while preserving the impossible stunts and survival scenarios. The video ended with a simple message in every major Earth language: "We accept your challenge, choose your champion, humanity awaits." As the screen faded to black, the room was silent. "Holy shit," Jack finally said. "That actually looked convincing. If I didn't know better, I'd be terrified of us." Ellie agreed. Quill nodded slowly. "It strikes the perfect balance. Impressive enough to give them pause, but not so outlandish as to be obviously fictional." "So we're really doing this?" Jack asked. "This is our final play? Unless anyone has a better idea that doesn't involve surrender or annihilation," Ellie said. No one did. An hour later, Earth's final transmission was sent toward the approaching fleet. Then came the hardest part: waiting. The response arrived faster than expected. Commander Vex'lor appeared on screen, but something was different. The usual dramatic lighting was gone, replaced by what appeared to be the bridge of a ship. Multiple aliens moved in the background, their movements suggesting urgency. "Humans," Vex'lor began, his tone noticeably less theatrical, "your final transmission has been received and analyzed. The Tactical Council is impressed by your species' resilience." The alien commander shifted, and for the first time he seemed almost uncomfortable. "The hegemony has reconsidered the proposed champion combat. Upon further review, such a confrontation would be unnecessarily destructive." Max pumped his fist silently while Ellie gripped Jack's arm so hard he winced. "We will maintain position at the edge of your lunar orbit to observe your civilization further before determining appropriate action. The battle fleet remains ready should hostile intent be detected." The transmission ended, and the room erupted. "They blinked," Max shouted, jumping up and down. "They actually blinked." Ellie collapsed into a chair, laughing with relief. "I can't believe that worked. That absolutely should not have worked." Even Quill allowed himself a rare smile. "It seems Operation Blockbuster was a success, at least temporarily." Jack couldn't quite process it. "So they're just sitting there, watching us. Better than annihilating us," Ellie pointed out. "For now," Quill cautioned. "This isn't over. They're still deciding what to do with us." General Williams burst into the room, followed by the president herself. "It worked?" the president asked, looking around at their faces for confirmation. "It worked," Jack confirmed. "They're hanging back at lunar orbit. No immediate plans to attack." The president closed her eyes briefly in relief. "Thank God. And thank all of you." "So what now?" Jack asked. "We can't keep this bluff going forever. Eventually, they'll figure out we've been exaggerating our capabilities." The president and general exchanged looks. "Actually," the general said, "that's where things get interesting. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected multiple new energy signatures approaching the solar system." "More aliens?" Ellie asked, alarmed. "Different aliens," the president clarified. "At least 3 distinct fleet configurations, all decelerating as they approach our system, and they're hailing us." "And the hegemony?" Max's eyes widened. "No way." "You mean, it seems," the president said with a slight smile, "that word has spread about the fearsome humans who defied the galactic hegemony. These new arrivals appear to be interested parties." "Interested how?" Jack asked suspiciously. "Based on our preliminary translations, they're asking about potential alliances," the general explained. "Apparently, any species that can stand up to the hegemony is worth knowing." Jack stared at the president, then at his teammates, then back at the president. "So you're telling me that not only did we avoid annihilation, but we've accidentally turned Earth into some kind of galactic power player?" "That's one interpretation," the president acknowledged. A more accurate one might be that we've become a curiosity, a primitive species that somehow commands respect. It's an unprecedented diplomatic opportunity. Ambassador Quill straightened his shoulders, his diplomatic instincts finally finding familiar ground. Madam President, with your permission, I'd like to begin drafting response protocols for these new contacts. Granted, Ambassador, but keep Dr. Nash and her team involved. Their unconventional approach has proven effective. As the President and General left to brief the Security Council, Jack turned to his teammates. So let me get this straight. We accidentally started a war with aliens, accidentally convinced them we're too dangerous to attack, and now we've accidentally attracted the attention of multiple alien civilizations who think we're some kind of badass warrior planet. Pretty much, Ellie confirmed. And now we have to keep pretending to be that badass warrior planet, or the whole thing falls apart. That's the general idea, Max agreed cheerfully. Jack looked at the orbital display, where multiple new signatures had appeared alongside the hegemony fleet. Earth, a relatively insignificant planet, in a relatively ordinary solar system, was suddenly the center of interstellar attention, all because he'd spilled coffee and sent a sarcastic gif. This is going to get complicated, isn't it? Jack sighed.
Ellie patted his shoulder. Look on the bright side. If we pull this off, you'll go from being the guy who nearly doomed humanity to the guy who accidentally established Earth as a galactic superpower. And if we don't pull it off, then we're back to annihilation, she said with a shrug. But hey, at least it won't be boring. As the team watched the alien fleet holding position at the edge of lunar orbit, Jack couldn't decide whether to laugh or panic. There was something oddly fitting about humanity's first major interstellar diplomatic victory being built entirely on bluster, bravado, and B-movies. Perhaps in some strange way that made their deception the most honest first contact possible. The aliens thought they were dealing with the humans from action movies. Maybe, just for a little while longer, humanity could live up to that reputation. 6 months after humanity's accidental declaration of intergalactic war, Jack Hawkins stood at the observation deck of the newly constructed Interstellar Diplomatic Center, watching shuttles from 3 different alien civilizations descend toward the landing pads. Still can't believe this is my life now, he muttered. Supreme Commander of Interstellar Badassery having second thoughts, Ellie asked, joining him at the window. Jack winced at the title. After the crisis, the President had insisted on promoting him to a position that sounded impressive to alien delegations while keeping him far away from any actual decision-making. The aliens loved it, humans, not so much. I'm a communications officer who spilled coffee, Ellie. Not exactly qualified to represent humanity to the galaxy. None of us are qualified for this, she pointed out. But we're doing it anyway. Below them, a sleek craft from the Trilaxian Confederation touched down beside the more utilitarian vessel of the Free Systems Alliance. Both had arrived for the first ever Galactic Cooperation Summit, hosted by humanity. The absurdity still hadn't worn off. Ambassador Quill is looking for you, Ellie said. Something about the hegemony delegation demanding to meet Earth's legendary warrior diplomat before the formal proceedings. Jack groaned. Can't you go? You're much better at this than I am. Sorry, I've got my own problems. The Centauri linguistic team thinks I'm some kind of spiritual guru because I keep accidentally quoting movie lines they consider profound wisdom. Since the standoff, Earth had become an improbable nexus of galactic politics. The hegemony, unwilling to admit they'd been bluffed, had pivoted to treating humanity as a primitive but promising warrior culture worthy of observation. 3 other civilizations, all with their own hegemony grievances, had quickly established diplomatic relations with Earth, hoping to benefit from humanity's apparent fearlessness. And somehow, against all odds, Earth was making it work. There you are. Max bounded up to them, wearing what appeared to be a standard military uniform that had been enhanced with unnecessary straps, pockets, and what looked suspiciously like LED lights along the shoulders. The Trilaxian ambassador just asked me to explain our molecular destabilization defense grid again. Jack raised an eyebrow. The one that doesn't exist. Exactly. Max grinned. I showed them the new diagrams I made. They were very impressed that we can theoretically turn our entire atmosphere into plasma for 3.7 seconds. Can we? Ellie asked. Of course not. We'd all die instantly. But they don't need to know that. Max's expression was somewhere between manic and gleeful. The best part is,
They're so scared of asking follow-up questions that might offend us that they just nod and look worried. Jack shook his head in disbelief. This can't go on forever, you know. Eventually someone's going to figure out we've been exaggerating. Exaggerating implies there's some truth to it. Ellie corrected. We've been straight up lying our asses off. Actually, Max said, lowering his voice conspiratorially. That's why I was looking for you both. You need to see what R&D has been working on. Jack and Ellie exchanged glances. After the crisis, world governments had poured unprecedented funding into defensive technology research, hoping to eventually develop at least some of the capabilities they'd claimed to already possess. Show us, Jack said. 20 minutes later, they stood in a secure laboratory beneath the diplomatic center, watching in amazement as a scientist demonstrated what appeared to be a functioning energy shield, smaller and less powerful than what they'd claimed in their transmissions, but very real. How is this possible? Jack asked. 6 months ago this was complete science fiction. Dr. Katori, the lead scientist, smiled. You'd be surprised how motivating it is when the entire planet is pretending to already have technology we don't. Besides, once we started reverse engineering some of the non-military tech the Trilaxians shared, we made exponential progress. So you're saying our bluff is becoming real? Ellie asked incredulously. Not all of it, Dr. Katori clarified. We're still centuries away from the planetary defense grid Lieutenant Rodriguez described, but the small-scale applications, we're advancing faster than anyone thought possible. As they left the laboratory, Jack felt a strange mix of hope and anxiety. So we're in a race, he said, developing enough real technology to back up our claims before anyone discovers we've been faking it. Pretty much, Max agreed cheerfully. Isn't it great? That's a weird definition of great, Jack muttered. They entered the main diplomatic hall, where Ambassador Quill was skillfully managing the growing crowd of alien dignitaries. For someone who had initially been appalled by their deception, Quill had adapted remarkably well to the new paradigm of interspecies relations. Ah, Supreme Commander Hawkins, Quill called out, waving him over. The Hegemony delegation was just asking about your legendary coffee-based weapon system. Jack blinked in confusion. You know, Quill said meaningfully, the one that single-handedly initiated our cultural exchange. Understanding dawned. Somehow, his coffee spill had been mythologized into an intentional act of defiance. Jack forced a smile. Yes, of course, the, caffeine destabilization protocol. Very classified. The Hegemony diplomat, not Vex'lor, but a lower-ranking official with only 4 eyes, looked suitably impressed. The tales of your species continue to astonish, Supreme Commander. To weaponize a recreational beverage shows remarkable tactical flexibility. That's us, Jack agreed weakly. Flexible. As the diplomat moved on, Jack turned to Quill. This is getting out of hand. On the contrary, Quill replied smoothly. It's working better than we could have hoped. 6 months ago, we were facing annihilation. Today we're hosting a summit with 4 advanced civilizations, who all want alliance agreements, based on capabilities we don't have yet, Quill corrected. Capabilities we don't have yet. Dr. Katori's team is making remarkable progress. Before Jack could argue further, the main doors opened to admit the final delegation, representatives from a civilization called the Solarian Collective, who had only established contact 3 weeks ago, after hearing rumors about the fearsome humans. Their ambassador, a tall luminescent being, approached Jack directly. Supreme Commander Hawkins, your reputation precedes you. My reputation is greatly exaggerated, Jack replied honestly, earning a sharp elbow from Ellie. The ambassador's glow brightened in what might have been amusement. Perhaps, but is that not true of all great legends? We of the collective have observed that perception often carries more weight than reality in galactic politics. Jack stared at the alien. Are you saying you know we've been embellishing? I am saying, the ambassador replied carefully, that the collective appreciates a species clever enough to establish itself through narrative rather than force, a refreshing approach in a galaxy too often dominated by actual weaponry, rather than the fear. As the ambassador glided away, Jack turned to Ellie with wide eyes. Did he just, basically say they know we're full of shit but respect the hustle? Yes, Ellie confirmed. Which is actually kind of validating. The formal summit began an hour later, with representatives from Earth and 4 alien civilizations seated around a massive circular table. Jack, as the reluctant Supreme Commander, had been given a position of honor beside the President. "Before we begin," the President said, addressing the gathered delegates, "I want to acknowledge the unusual circumstances that brought us together. 6 months ago, humanity had no knowledge of galactic civilization. Today, we sit as equals at this table." Commander Vex'lor, who had insisted on personally leading the hegemony delegation, raised a hand. "If I may, Madam President, the hegemony wishes to formally acknowledge humanity's status change from potential protectorate to associate civilization. Your species has proven itself uniquely capable." Jack tried not to laugh at the diplomatic language disguising what was essentially the hegemony's saving face. "Furthermore," Vex'lor continued, "the hegemony extends an offer of technological exchange in the areas of non-military space travel and agricultural sciences." Translation: "We're still pretending we think you're dangerous. Here's some harmless tech to keep you friendly." The President nodded graciously. "Earth accepts and will reciprocate with cultural and scientific exchanges of our own." Translation: "We'll send you movies and basic tech that won't reveal how primitive we actually are." As the summit proceeded, Jack watched in amazement as humanity, represented by people who fully understood the absurdity of their position, negotiated agreements with multiple advanced civilizations, who either believed or pretended to believe in Earth's exaggerated capabilities. It was diplomacy built on a foundation of B-movies and bluster, and somehow, it was working. Later, at the reception following the formal agreements, Jack found himself alone with Ellie and Max on a balcony overlooking the nighttime skyline, where the lights of the diplomatic center mingled with the distant glow of the city. 6 months ago, I was a night shift communications officer," Jack said, staring up at the stars. "Now I'm supposedly the alien whisperer who established Earth as a galactic power, and I was a xeno-linguist with no aliens to study," Ellie added. "Now I'm running cultural exchange programs with 4 different species, most of whom think I'm quoting ancient Earth wisdom when I reference the Princess Bride."
"And I," Max said proudly, "am officially Earth's Strategic Innovation Director, which means I get paid to make up cool-sounding weapons we don't have while our scientists try to build less impressive versions that actually work." They all laughed, the absurdity of their situation finally hitting home. "You know what the funniest part is?" Jack said. "We didn't actually lie about the most important thing." "What's that?" Ellie asked. "That humans are ridiculously stubborn and refuse to give up even when outmatched," Jack explained. "All those movies showing humans overcoming impossible odds, that part's real. We just exaggerated the explosions." "Profound," Max declared, mimicking the reverent tone the aliens often used when humans said basically anything. "Truly your wisdom transcends understanding, Supreme Commander." "Shut up," Jack laughed, shoving him lightly. Ambassador Quill joined them, looking uncharacteristically relaxed with his tie loosened and a glass of champagne in hand. "Quite a view, isn't it?" They all nodded, taking in the sight of alien shuttles illuminated against the night sky, tangible proof that humanity was no longer alone in the universe. "We should drink to something," Ellie suggested, raising her glass. "To first contact." "To not being annihilated," Jack offered. "To Operation Blockbuster," Max said enthusiastically. Quill considered for a moment, then raised his own glass. "How about to humanity, may our reality someday live up to our reputation." They clinked glasses as high above, the lights of alien ships traced paths across the stars. Jack Hawkins, accidental architect of Earth's new galactic standing, couldn't help but smile at the cosmic irony. Humanity had bluffed its way into interstellar politics with nothing but movie references and memes, and in doing so they might have accidentally secured the time and resources needed to become the civilization they were pretending to be. "You know," Jack said thoughtfully, "if you think about it, this is the most human first contact scenario possible." "How do you figure?" Ellie asked. "We talked our way out of trouble, confused everyone with pop culture, and somehow failed upward into a better position than when we started." Jack grinned. "If that doesn't say humanity, I don't know what does." As the night continued, the unlikely heroes of Earth's first contact watched the stars with new perspective. The universe was vast, complex, and filled with civilizations far more advanced than their own. But it turned out that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology,
military might or even actual capabilities. It was narrative, the stories they told, the impressions they created, and most importantly, the unshakable confidence with which they bluffed their way into a universe that had no idea what to make of them. And in the end, wasn't that the most human thing of all? Humanity, F***, yeah indeed.